All right, I'm here with another creative pep talk for you. And today I want to talk about giving feedback. So we mentioned this last time, and that may seem like a strange thing for a pep talk, right? Giving feedback is something you do for other people, but actually you also give yourself feedback. So I think it's important to talk about it in both directions because the way that you give other people feedback is probably also the way that you give yourself feedback. So if you are reading, watching, listening to somebody else's creative endeavor, if you have any respect for that person, which I hope you do, if they've asked you to do that, because they certainly have entrusted you with, their baby, not to be over dramatic, but for a lot of people, that really is how that feels. You need to treat it with the respect and care that you've been given in being asked to offer your feedback. So maybe it seems obvious that you shouldn't be rude and dismissive about it, but a lot of people don't understand that they shouldn't be rude and dismissive about it. Especially, I mentioned when I talked about the TikTok video that people responded to that someone mentioned their MFA program. A lot of workshops in a lot of creative writing MFA programs are vicious. They're absolutely vicious. I mean, it's whoever gets out of it with the least blood on them wins. It's not okay. It is a totally, totally toxic culture. And, even if you see that, I will admit there is a reason that I have not seen the movie Whiplash. And it's because I don't go in for sadism and I don't believe in elevating that kind of behavior to anything like normal. And obviously, since I haven't seen the movie, I can't judge whether or not it portrays that as a good thing or a bad thing. I certainly hope it does not portray it as a positive thing, but it's possible that it does. So even if you've seen something like that in pop culture, or if you've experienced it in classes that you were in, that doesn't make it okay. In fact, if you experience that in a class or a workshop, then that says an awful lot about the person who was leading the workshop and about everybody else in the workshop for being willing to go along with it. So when you're offering feedback, you want to remember that this is a precious thing to the person who asked you about it. It's something that they're hoping will be wonderful. It's something that they've put their time and their effort into. And so there are ways to say, I don't think this part is working the way you want it to, like that, as opposed to, this part's terrible. What were you thinking? Which people do. One of the best ways to give feedback is to ask questions. Questions leave room for people to rethink something that they've done. They leave room for the possibility that you're not judging them. They leave room for the possibility that things can be better. So instead of saying, this part is terrible, it just doesn't work, I don't know what you were thinking, you could say, could you explain to me what you're trying to do here? Because I didn't quite understand it. You could say, I'm not sure if you wanted this character to come across as bossy or as authoritative. And so I'm not sure what kind of feedback to give you until I have more information from you about that. And then if it turns out that the intent was for the character to be authoritative and they just come across as bossy and snarky, you can say, well, I'm glad that I understand that now because that wasn't clear to me. And when I read it, it felt really bossy and sarcastic and unpleasant to me. And if that's not what you were going for, then you might want to rethink it. You notice how that doesn't say, well, that's not what you did, so I don't know what you were doing here, but it was all wrong and terrible. Again, it may seem obvious that you shouldn't do this when you're giving people feedback, but it's not obvious to a lot of people. And like I said, the way that you give feedback to other people is probably the way you give feedback to yourself. It's much nicer to yourself and much more productive for yourself and for your continued creative process if you're not just tearing yourself to shreds all the time. If you're not sitting there looking at your work and going, good Lord, what was I thinking when I did this? This is absolutely terrible. It may be true that it's terrible, but that still doesn't mean that, you're a terrible person, that you're a terrible writer, author, playwright, photographer, musician, artist, whatever. You're not. And that also goes back to the conversation I had with Kimberly Stewart about how you are not your work. You don't want to get those two things mixed up. You don't want to draw all your value from the work. And how you respond to feedback and how you respond to your own impressions when you're doing your own critique of your own work is part of that. You need to back up, get yourself 10 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet away from it. So it's not right here against your nose where you can't see straight, which may mean literal distance. It may mean psychological distance. It may mean time. For a lot of us, it means time. Stick that novel manuscript in a drawer for a month before you look at it again, or anything else that you're working on. Just take a break from it. But most importantly, be kind when you're offering other people feedback. You can be honest and be kind at the same time. And do the same for yourself. Tough love does not mean, ripping someone's head off and destroying their self-worth. It means being honest, especially when you've been asked to be honest, in a helpful and constructive way. So if you've got any questions about that, if you have any examples that you think are worthy in either direction, feel free to let me know, because they're useful for helping other people to understand what's good feedback and what isn't. And as always, if you need extra help, if you want a little guidance on your way, check out my group program and feel free to contact me if you'd like to work one-on-one or just to say hello. So that's it for next time. I'll see you later. Good luck.